The Alpha King ordered the wolfless girl lowered into the Silver Howl Well to prove she had no soul worth saving. The well was not made for mercy. It stood in the center of the royal courtyard like an open mouth cut into white stone, older than the palace, older than the throne, older than the law that had dragged Mira Vale barefoot before it. Around its rim, silver wolves had been carved with their heads thrown back, their stone jaws open in eternal cries. Moonwater glowed far below, too bright to be natural and too still to be safe. The court had gathered to watch her sink. Not officially. Ravengard had prettier words for cruelty when nobles were present. They called it a proving, a wolfless girl who had lived too close to royal blood, too near sacred water, too long beneath roofs meant for true pack souls, would be lowered into the Silver Howl Well. If she carried even the smallest wolf spark, the water would rise and return her. If she carried no wolf, no destiny, no bond worth preserving, the well would remain silent. And silence meant exile if she survived, burial if she did not. Mira stood at the edge with a silver rope around her waist and 2 guards holding each end. Her plain grey dress clung damply to her legs from the ritual washing. Her dark hair had been braided too tightly by temple hands, not to honor her, but to keep it from hiding her face when the court saw her shame. A wolfless girl should be clearly seen. That was part of the punishment. She is shaking, someone whispered. Of course she is. The well knows emptiness. She cleaned the lunar chambers for 3 years. Perhaps she hoped proximity would grow her a wolf. A few noblewomen laughed softly. Mira kept her hands folded in front of her. Not because she was calm, because if she let them see her fingers tremble, they would enjoy it too much. Around the courtyard, alphas, noble daughters, moon priests, commanders, and royal wolves watched beneath the ashen crown banners. The night was cold, the stone wet with silver mist, and every torch flame bent away from the well as if afraid of what slept beneath the water. None of the wolves looked at Mira. That hurt more than the laughter. A wolf might hate, a wolf might growl, a wolf might reject, but to be unseen by wolves was a quieter kind of death. All her life, that had been her wound, not merely that she could not shift, not merely that no inner beast had ever answered her fear. It was the way wolves moved around her, as if her body carried no echo at all, no scent worth remembering, no promise hidden beneath skin. When the moon rose and every true soul in Ravengard felt its wolf stir, Mira felt only her own heartbeat. Small, human, ashamed. High Counselor Seravin stepped to the well's rim. He was tall and thin, with white hair bound in a silver clasp and a face so smooth with discipline that it seemed carved rather than born. His robes were dark blue, the color of deep water before drowning. At his side stood Lady Evelyn, the chosen political Luna, beautiful in a pale gold gown that caught the torchlight like sunlight trapped in silk. Eveline did not laugh at Mira. That would have been easier. Instead, she looked at her with gentle pity, the kind meant for an audience. Poor thing, Evelyn murmured. Let the right be swift. Her fingers rested on the moon pearls at her throat, and one pearl glowed when Mira stepped closer to the well. Mira saw it. So did Seravin. But neither of them spoke. Seravin lifted one hand, and the courtyard stilled. By order of the Ashen Crown and the ancient law of sacred waters, Mira Vale is brought before the Silver Howl Well to answer the question her body has avoided since birth. Her body, as if Mira had hidden her wolf out of stubbornness, as if she had chosen emptiness. Seravin turned toward the highest terrace. Your Majesty, will you witness? The crowd parted in silence. Alpha King Darius Veyr stood beneath the black arch of the royal balcony. He had been there the whole time, but Mira had avoided looking at him. Looking at kings was dangerous. Looking at this king felt worse. Darius was all shadow and restraint, tall and broad in black armor, his dark hair loose around a face made severe by power and grief. His eyes were pale silver, but not bright. They looked like moonlight seen through storm clouds. A heavy fur cloak rested over his shoulders. and beside him stood no wolf. That absence had a weight of its own. Everyone knew the king's mate bond had died years ago. Not his mate. His bond. A rare tragedy, the council called it. A sacred severing, the moon's refusal. Afterward, Darius had become colder, harder, and more useful to the court. He agreed to political negotiations. He tolerated lunar candidates. He let Seravin speak often, but he never let any woman stand too close. Not even Evelyn, though she had been raised for him like a blade polished for one hand. Darius looked down at Mira. For one breath, the entire courtyard seemed to narrow to that gaze. He did not pity her. He did not mock her. He studied her as if something about the ritual had gone wrong before it began. Mira hated the tiny spark of relief that lit inside her. A king's attention had teeth. "I witness," Darius said. His voice moved through the courtyard like dark water under ice. Seravin nodded. "Then let the well judge what the moon did not give." The guards tightened the silver rope. Mira's breath caught. The well waited at her back. A temple woman stepped forward with a shallow bowl of silver water. She dipped 2 fingers and marked Mira's brow, throat, and heart. "No wolf above," she whispered. The first mark burned cold. "No wolf within." The second stole her breath. No wolf to answer below. The third mark sank into Mira's chest like a stone. Something in the well stirred. Not visibly. No one else reacted. But Mira heard it. A sound far below, beneath the glowing water. Not a howl. A thread being pulled through darkness. She turned her head toward the well before she could stop herself. Seravin saw. His expression changed for half a second. Not surprise. Alarm. Then it vanished. "Lower her," he ordered. The guards pushed. Mira fell backward over the rim. The court gasped, not in horror, but in pleasure at the suddenness. Cold air swallowed her first. Then silver water. It closed over her head with a silence so complete that the world above became a blur of torchlight and watching faces. The rope held her waist, keeping her from sinking too deep, but the water dragged at her as if it knew her weight by memory. It should have been freezing. Instead, it felt like hands searching through her skin. Mira opened her eyes. Silver light surrounded her. "No wolf," the temple mark had said. "No wolf within." Then why did the water whisper? Not words. Not yet. A melody. Low, broken, waiting. The rope jerked, pulling her upward, but the water rose with her. Mira broke the surface, choking. The courtyard had gone silent. The Silver Howl Well was overflowing. Moon water climbed the stone walls in slow, shining sheets, spilling over the carved wolves, flooding the courtyard steps. Nobles stumbled back. Wolves rose to their feet with sudden whines. Seravin stared at the well as if an old grave had opened. Mira tried to breathe. Something luminous wrapped around her wrist beneath the water. A thread. Silver. Alive. It rose from the depths and slid into her palm like it had been waiting for her hand. On the balcony, King Darius staggered. His hand flew to his chest. Beside him, where no wolf had stood, a vast shadow appeared against the moonlit wall, the shape of a wolf throwing back its head in silent agony. The silver thread in Mira's palm pulled toward Darius's chest, not away from it. And from the drowned heart of the well, a voice whispered through the water. Not dead. Hidden. The water should have fallen back. It did not. Silver moon water poured over the rim of the well in slow, shining sheets, crawling across the courtyard stone like something alive and searching. Nobles scrambled away from it, lifting silk hems, stumbling over one another, suddenly less graceful than the wolves they claimed to rule. The royal guards tightened the rope around Mira's waist, but no one dared pull her fully out, because the thread in her hand was glowing brighter. It stretched from beneath the water to King Darius Veyr's chest, not touching him, not yet, but pulling toward him with the quiet certainty of a promise that had waited too long. Darius stood on the balcony with one hand pressed over his heart, his face emptied of color. Behind him, the shadow of the wolf on the wall shuddered, silent jaws open in pain. It was not a true wolf, not flesh, not spirit fully, only a shape cast by something missing. Lady Evelyn saw it and stepped closer to him. The moon pearls at her throat glowed again. This time Mira saw more clearly. One pearl brightened, then dimmed, as if drinking from the silver thread stretched between the well and the king. Darius staggered. Mira's fingers tightened around the thread. The moment she did, he breathed again. Evelyn's hand froze on the pearls. High Counselor Seravin turned sharply toward her, and in that quick glance Mira understood something without knowing how. They had not expected the well to answer, but they had prepared for what might happen if it did. "Pull her out," Darius commanded. His voice was rougher now, less like ice, more like a blade dragged from stone. The guards obeyed at once. The rope cut into Mira's waist as they hauled her toward the rim. She tried to let go of the silver thread, but it clung to her palm, wrapping once around her wrist, not tight enough to bind, only enough to refuse abandonment. "No," Seravin said. The guards stopped. Darius's eyes flashed. "I gave an order, and I serve the crown by preventing a disaster your wound cannot judge clearly." A terrible silence fell. No one spoke to Darius that way unless they had power behind them. Seravin did. The council, the temple, the noble houses that had arranged Evelyn's rise and Darius's future marriage. All those invisible hands seemed to gather around the well. Mira hung half in the water, half out of it, shivering under the weight of every stare. Seravin pointed his staff toward her. "The girl has awakened drowned magic. No wolfless servant should be able to touch a mate. Thread. This is not proof of destiny. It is proof of corruption. I am not touching it," Mira whispered. Her voice barely carried, but the well carried it. The water repeated her words in a low silver murmur. "Not touching it. Not touching it. Not touching it." The wolves around the courtyard lifted their heads. For the first time in Mira's life, they looked at her. All of them. Their eyes shone pale beneath the moon. Hunting wolves, temple wolves, royal wolves. Even the old scarred black wolf beside the eastern gate, half-blind and famously loyal to no one, stared at her as if hearing a song beneath her skin. Mira's throat tightened. It should have felt triumphant. It felt terrifying. Seravin's mouth hardened. "Cover her ears." Two temple women moved toward the well with strips of white cloth soaked in ash water. Darius left the balcony. He did not descend with ceremony. He took the stairs like a storm contained in human shape, cloak snapping behind him, boots striking wet stone. The crowd parted before him too late and too clumsily, terrified of the look on his face. By the time the temple women reached the well, Darius was already there. "Touch her," he said, "and lose the hand." The women stopped. Mira looked up at him from the water. Close, he was more frightening. Not because of his size, though he was powerful enough to make the guards seem like boys. Not because of his rank, it was the restraint in him. The sense that something enormous inside him had been chained so long that every breath was an act of discipline. His eyes dropped to the thread around her wrist. Pain crossed his face so quickly she almost missed it. Almost. "What do you hear?" he asked. Mira shook her head. "I don't know." Seravin stepped closer. "Majesty, she must not be questioned beside the well. Sacred water twists memory." Darius did not look away from Mira. "What do you hear?" She swallowed. The thread pulsed in her palm. Far beneath the well, the melody deepened. It was still not a voice, exactly. More like grief, trying to remember words. Mira listened because she could not stop herself, and then she heard it. A vow, broken into pieces. "I found you beneath the blood moon. I knew you before the crown. No council can drown what the wolf has chosen." Midagaspeth. Darius went still. "What did you hear?" he asked, softer now. She looked past him, toward Evelyn on the steps. The noblewoman's hand had closed tightly around the moon pearls. One pearl was no longer pale. It had turned silver red. Serovin noticed Mira looking. His staff struck the stone. Enough. The proving has failed. The girl is to be taken below the temple for cleansing. Mira's heart dropped. Cleansing never meant washing. Darius turned on him. She is to be brought out of the well. She is carrying a drowned bond. She is holding what belongs to me. The words struck the courtyard like thunder. Lady Evelyn's face changed. Only for a moment. But enough. Not hurt. Fear. Mira saw it, and the silver water around her waist suddenly warmed. The thread pulled again toward Darius. This time, the shadow wolf behind him appeared not on the wall, but on the flooded stone at his feet. It rose there like smoke, vast and dark, its head lowered toward the shining thread. Every wolf in the courtyard whined. Serovin's calm cracked. Do not let it touch him. The temple guards moved first. They seized the rope and shoved Mira downward. Darius lunged, but silver chains shot from the well's outer ring, ancient and hidden beneath the carved wolves. They snapped around his wrists before he reached her, yanking him back with enough force to crack the stone. Mira plunged under. The world vanished in silver. This time the well did not hold her near the surface. It pulled her down. The thread remained in her hand, burning brighter as darkness opened below. Through the water, she saw things that could not be there. A younger Darius kneeling beside the same well, blood on his mouth, his hand outstretched while men in council robes forced a shining bond thread beneath the surface. Beside them stood Evelyn, younger but unmistakable, wearing a single moon pearl at her throat. Mira's lungs began to burn. The drowned voice rose around her. They did not kill the bond. They fed on it. Above, Darius roared. Not a word. Not a command. A wolf's sound. The silver chains holding him snapped one link at a time. And deep beneath the water, Mira saw the drowned mate thread open like an eye. The drowned mate thread opened like an eye beneath the water. Mira saw it blink once in the silver dark. Not with lashes, not with flesh, but with light folding inward around a black center. The thread in her hand tightened, and the well dragged her deeper, past the reach of the rope, past the blurred shapes of the court above, past the place where moonlight should have ended. Her lungs burned. Still, the well would not let her drown. It held the pain at the edge of death without granting the mercy of finishing it. Images moved around her in the water. Darius, younger, not yet crowned, on his knees beside the well, blood on his mouth, his eyes wild, one hand stretched toward the shining thread being forced beneath the surface. Counselors in dark robes stood around him, chanting old water lore. Serovin was there, younger but already cold. Beside him stood Evelyn, a pale girl with moon pearls at her throat and fear hidden behind obedience. The thread screamed without sound. So did Darius. Mira reached toward the vision, and the water cut through her memory like a blade. No, not memory. Witness. The drowned voice surrounded her. Well-song blood does not dream. It hears what water was forced to keep. Mira's fingers clenched around the thread. Well-song. The word moved through her like a name she had never been allowed to know. Above, through the silver ceiling of water, Darius roared again. The sound shook the well. Chains snapped somewhere far away, one after another, like bones breaking under the moon. The eye in the thread widened. Inside it, Mira saw a wolf. Not the shadow at Darius's feet. The true one. A vast black wolf with a silver throat, chained beneath layers of drowned light, its muzzle forced shut by strands of moon pearl. It was not dead. It was starving, its eyes fixed on Mira, as if it had been waiting beneath the water for years, not for rescue exactly, but for someone who could finally hear the truth. The wolf pushed one word through the thread. Return. The water released her. Mira shot upward. She broke the surface with a gasp so violent it tore her throat raw. The courtyard exploded back into sound-shouting nobles, snarling wolves, guards struggling against rising water, temple women calling for ashcloth and binding hooks. Darius stood at the well's edge with broken silver chains hanging from his wrists. Blood ran from where the metal had cut him. No one was touching him now. The shadow wolf crouched beside him on the flooded stone, larger than before, but still incomplete, its body flickering like smoke trapped between worlds. Its head was turned toward Mira, and its silent jaws trembled with the same word the thread had given her. Return. Darius reached down. Mira lifted her hand before she could think. Their fingers almost touched. The silver thread flared between them. Then Seravin struck. His staff hit the well's rim, and black ash spilled from a hidden hollow inside it. The ash struck the overflowing moonwater and spread like poison through milk. The silver light dimmed. The thread in Mira's palm burned cold, then began slipping from her grasp. Darius seized the rope at her waist and hauled her upward himself. Seravin's voice cracked through the courtyard. Separate them! Royal guards rushed forward. Darius pulled Mira over the rim before they could reach her. She collapsed onto wet stone at his feet, coughing silver water from her lungs. The thread still clung to her hand, but faintly now, flickering under the ash spreading across the flooded courtyard. Darius knelt beside her. It was such a shocking thing that the court went still. The Alpha King knelt in moonwater before a wolfless girl. Mira tried to push herself up. Do not. His hand closed around her shoulder, steady but careful. Breathe first. The words were not soft, but they were not cruel. That almost undid her. Seravin advanced. Majesty, stand away. The girl has pulled drowned magic into the open. She must be bound before the bond reaches your heart. Darius did not rise. It already reached my heart years ago. Lady Evelyn descended the steps at last. Her golden gown gathered in one hand to avoid the water. Her face was pale, composed, beautiful, but the moon pearls at her throat betrayed her. 3 of them glowed now, silver red and pulsing. Darius, she said, and the use of his name made the court inhale sharply. Please, you are bleeding. Let the healers come. Mira looked at the pearls. The thread in her palm tugged weakly toward them. Not toward Eveline's heart, toward her throat. Mira's voice came out hoarse. The pearls. Eveline stopped. Seravin's eyes flashed. Darius looked down at Mira. What? Mira lifted her shaking hand. The silver thread rose from her palm, faint but visible, stretching not only toward Darius now, but toward Eveline's necklace. They are feeding on it, Mira whispered. The courtyard went silent again. Eveline's face did not change quickly enough. Darius rose, slowly. The shadow wolf rose with him. Remove them, he said. Eveline's fingers closed around the pearls. They are my betrothal pearls. Remove them. Seravin stepped between them. Majesty, this is madness. A wolfless servant speaks from shock, and you accuse your future Luna. Darius's gaze stayed on Eveline. Remove them yourself, or I will. The threat was quiet. The wolves heard it first. Their hackles lifted. Eveline's breathing changed. Her hand tightened so hard around the necklace that one pearl cracked. Silver light leaked from it, and the thread in Mira's palm suddenly blazed. A sound burst from the broken pearl. A vow. Darius's voice, younger and raw with love. I would know you in any darkness. The court heard it. Darius went still as death. Mira felt the vow strike him through the thread, felt his body remember what his mind had been forced to bury. Eveline stepped back. I did not know what they were at first. At first, Darius said. The words were colder than winter. Seravin raised his staff again, but this time the royal wolves blocked him. One by one, they stepped through the silver water, placing themselves between the counselor and the king. Mira stared at them. They were not looking through her anymore. They were waiting for her to speak. The well behind her began to hum. Lo, ancien, hungry for truth. Seravin saw the wolves, the thread, the broken pearl, the king's face, and made his choice. Then let the well keep what it has taken. He struck the stone a second time. The black ash in the water surged upward, forming a ring around Mira's throat like a drowned collar. She choked, clawing at nothing as the thread in her palm was pulled violently back toward the well. Darius caught her before she fell. But the well pulled too. The silver water rose between them, shaping itself into a hand around the thread. And from below, the drowned bond whispered one last warning. The false Luna wears the lock. The false Luna wears the lock. The warning moved through Mira like cold water poured into bone. For a moment, she could not breathe, could not speak, could not even lift her hands to the invisible collar tightening around her throat. Black ash swirled in the silver water, climbing higher around her neck, pulling the shining mate thread from her palm inch by inch. Darius held her against him with one arm while his other hand closed around the thread. The instant he touched it, pain struck him. His body locked, his jaw clenched. The shadow wolf beside him staggered as if the same wound had cut through them both. The thread burned between his fingers, not rejecting him, but recognizing him too violently after years of drowning. Mira felt the truth of it. This bond wanted him. It had always wanted him, but something around Evelyn's throat held it back like a chain through living light. "Take off the pearls," Mira forced out. The ash collar tightened, turning her words into a broken rasp. Evelyn stood frozen near the flooded steps. Her pale gold gown trailed in the moonwater. The cracked pearl at her throat leaked thin silver light, and the other pearls pulsed in answer, one after another, as if something inside them had begun to wake. Darius lifted his head. Evelyn. Her name in his mouth was not affection. It was judgment. She shook her head once. "You do not understand what he made me carry." Seravin turned on her sharply. "Be silent." That was the wrong command. Everyone heard it. Evelyn's eyes flashed toward him, fear turning to resentment. "I was 13 when they gave me the first pearl." The courtyard held still. Even the wolves quieted. Darius's hand tightened around the thread. Blood ran from his fingers where the light cut him. "What is inside them?" Evelyn's lips trembled, but she did not answer quickly enough. Mira heard the well hum beneath the ash. It was angry now, not with blind rage, with the patience of water that had held too many secrets. The thread in Darius's hand pulled toward Evelyn's necklace. Mira, half choked by the ash collar, saw images flicker inside the broken pearl. Darius younger, standing beneath a blood moon, a woman's hand reaching for his, a wolf shadow circling them both, then Seravin's staff striking water, drowning the light before it could finish binding. But the woman in the vision was not Evelyn. Mira could not see her face clearly. Only dark hair loose in the wind, bare feet on wet stone, a silver mark glowing at her wrist, the same place where the thread had wrapped around Mira. Her stomach turned cold. Serovin saw recognition beginning in her face. "Bind the girl fully," he ordered. The temple women moved, but the wolves blocked them again. This time they growled, low, unified, deadly. Royal guards looked to Darius, then to Seravin, then to the water rising around their boots. The court was splitting. Not cleanly. Fear never split cleanly. Darius looked at Evelyn. "Remove the necklace." Evelyn's eyes shone. "If I do, it will kill me." Mira heard no lie in that. For the first time, Evelyn's beauty looked less like pride and more like a cage polished for public admiration. Her fingers trembled against the pearls. "They tied me to it too, not as your mate, as the lid over the grave." Seravin's face hardened. "You were honored. I was used. You were elevated. I was fed a drowned bond and told to smile." The cracked pearl flared. A sound burst from it. Not Darius this time. A girl crying in the dark. Evelyn's own voice, younger, terrified. "Please, it hurts." Then Seravin's voice answered from the memory. "Pain is the shape of duty." The court recoiled. Evelyn closed her eyes as shame crossed her face. Mira should have hated her. Part of her did. Evelyn had stood beside Seravin. Evelyn had watched her lowered into the well. Evelyn had let the court call her empty. But the well did not let Mira hold simple hatred. It showed her chains inside chains. Victims turned into locks. Locks taught to call themselves crowns. Darius stepped forward, still holding the thread. Who was she? Seravin said nothing. Darius's voice dropped. The woman whose bond you drowned. The silver water stopped moving. Eveline opened her eyes and looked at Mira. Not at Darius. At Mira. I never knew her name, she whispered. They said she died before the rite. They said the bond had chosen wrong. They said the crown needed a Luna who could be shaped. Mira felt the thread pulse against her wrist. The ash collar loosened for one breath. Beneath the well, the drowned voice rose again. Name buried, promise drowned, blood returned. Mira's heart began to pound. Blood returned. She looked down at the silver mark forming faintly beneath the water around her wrist. It was not a wolf mark, not a mate mark. It looked like a crescent wave wrapped around a thread. The same mark from the vision. Seravin began backing away from the well. Darius saw. So did Mira. You knew, she whispered. Seravin's eyes moved to her with pure hatred. I knew enough to fear what your blood would cost this kingdom. My blood, the well answered. Silver water surged upward behind Mira, forming a mirror taller than the carved wolves. Inside it appeared a woman with dark hair, and Mira's eyes, standing beside the well years ago, one hand pressed over her stomach, the other holding Darius's shining mate thread. Darius went utterly still. The shadow wolf beside him lowered its head with a broken sound. The woman in the water looked directly at Mira. Not dead, the well whispered. Hidden. Then the vision shifted. Seravin's counsel dragging the woman away. The mate thread drowned. The unborn child marked with well water before birth. Mira stumbled. Darius caught her before she fell, but his face had changed. Grief, horror, and impossible recognition moved through him all at once. Eveline covered her mouth. Seravin raised his staff for one final strike. Do not let her remember. But the Silver Howl Well had already risen around Mira like a crown of water, and every wolf in the courtyard turned toward her at once. The wolves did not bow. Not yet. They only looked at Mira. That was worse somehow. All her life, wolves had moved around her like she was a stone in the road. Now every wolf in the royal courtyard had turned its eyes to her at once, hunting wolves, temple wolves, even the shadow of Darius's broken beast standing half-formed beside him in the flooded moonlight. Mira stood waist-deep in silver water that had risen from the well and curled around her like a living crown. The ash collar at her throat cracked, loosened, then dissolved into black dust that drifted across the surface and vanished. Seravin lowered his staff slowly, not in surrender, in calculation. Do you see what it does? He said to the court. The well dresses her in old water, and you forget she was nothing an hour ago. Mira flinched. The word still found its mark. Nothing. Even with moonwater glowing around her wrists, even with the thread pulsing in her palm, some part of her remained the girl who had folded herself small in corners, waiting for others to decide whether she deserved bread, warmth, or a place to sleep. Darius felt her flinch. His hand tightened around the mate thread, and pain passed through his face again. The bond was hurting him, but he did not let go. She was never nothing, he said. The words moved through the courtyard more quietly than a shout, but they reached every terrace. Mira looked at him. He was watching Seravin, not her, yet those words had landed inside her like something fragile and dangerous. Belief. Eveline stood near the steps, one hand still covering the moon pearls at her throat. The cracked pearl bled silver light down her fingers. She looked trapped between terror and relief, as though she had waited years for the necklace to break and feared what would happen when it finally did. Mira forced herself to breathe. The well had shown too much too quickly. The dark-haired woman, the drowned thread, the unborn child marked with sacred water. Darius's grief twisted into obedience. She wanted to ask if the woman had been her mother. She wanted to ask if Darius had known. She wanted to ask why the court still stood there pretending this was a ritual instead of a grave opening beneath their feet. But the water whispered before she could speak. Do not chase the face. Call the promise. Mira looked down. The silver thread in her hand stretched in two directions now. One end pulled toward Darius's chest, the other sank beneath the water, down into the well's drowned heart. Between those two ends, the thread passed through Evelyn's pearls. A bond trapped in three places. The man who had lost it, the well that had swallowed it, the false Luna forced to wear its lock. Mira lifted her hand. The thread brightened. Evelyn gasped and dropped to one knee, clutching the necklace as if it had become a chain around her throat. Darius took one step toward her, not tenderly, not cruelly, with the controlled violence of a man walking toward the truth of a wound. Do not touch her, Seraphine warned. Darius did not stop. You have given too many warnings. If the pearls break incorrectly, the drowned bond will snap. It will tear through her throat, your chest, and whatever bloodline the girl carries. Mira heard no lie. That frightened her more than Meron's hatred would have. Seraphine wanted control, but not all of his fear was false. Something dangerous lived inside the pearls. Something made from a bond that should never have been drowned, and a girl who should never have been used as its lid. Evelyn looked at Mira. Her perfect face had broken at last. Beneath the polished beauty and court-trained sorrow was a woman who had been made into a weapon so young she had mistaken the blade for her own spine. I cannot take them off, she whispered. The court leaned in. Evelyn's voice shook. Every time I tried, I heard him screaming. Darius went still. Who? He asked. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. You. The shadow wolf beside him lowered its head. Mira felt the thread pulse, and suddenly the courtyard changed. Not physically. The well opened another witness. A younger Evelyn stood before a mirror, 13 or 14, moon pearls newly clasped around her throat. Seraphine stood behind her. The girl's hands clawed at the necklace as silver light burned under her skin. I hear the prince, young Evelyn sobbed. Seraphine adjusted the clasp. You hear the crown. He is crying, then learn to smile over it. The vision vanished. For once, no one spoke. Mira hated Seraphine in that silence with a clarity that steadied her. Not the hot hatred of a girl wanting someone punished for her suffering. A colder one. A hatred that finally understood the shape of the cage. Seraphine had not only stolen Darius's bond, he had not only erased Mira's blood before she was born, he had fed one child's pain into another and called the result political peace. Darius turned toward the counselor. The flooded water around his boots darkened. Did my father know? He asked. Seraphine's jaw tightened. Mira felt the answer before he gave it. No, Darius said softly. The word sounded like grief becoming a blade. Seraphine lifted his chin. Your father would have let the old bond ruin everything. He believed wolves chose better than kings. Darius's eyes turned silver black. He was right. The courtyard trembled. From the well came a deep, answering howl, though no wolf stood below. Mira clutched the thread with both hands. The water rose higher behind her, shaping itself into the dark-haired woman from the vision. Her face remained blurred, not because the well could not show it, but because some lock still held her name beneath the surface. Mira understood then. The bond would not fully rise until the woman was named. Until Mira was named by what she came from. She looked at Evelyn's necklace. The name is in the pearls. Evelyn nodded once, crying silently now. The first pearl. Seraphine moved. Darius moved faster. He caught Seraphine's staff before the counselor could strike the water again. Silver ash burst between their hands. Darius grunted, but he held on. The shadow wolf surged beside him, its jaws closing around the staff's reflected shadow on the flooded stone. The staff cracked. Seraphine's calm finally broke. If she wakes that name, the bond will choose. Mira looked at him through the rising water. Then, let it. She reached for Evelyn. The false Luna recoiled first, not from pride, but from fear. Mira stopped. "I will not tear it from you." Evelyn stared at her. No one in the court seemed to understand the sentence. They knew command, punishment, bargain, sacrifice. They did not understand offering pain a gentler door. Evelyn crawled one step closer through the silver water, then another. When she reached Mira, she bowed her head. "Please," she whispered, "end what they made me carry." Mira placed her bleeding fingers on the first moon pearl. It was cold, then burning, then alive. Inside it, a woman's voice cried out from years of drowned silence. Not his, mine. The pearl shattered. Silver light exploded across the courtyard, and the blurred woman in the water finally opened her eyes. Mira saw her face. Her own face, older, softer, full of a grief that had crossed death and water to be remembered. Darius made a broken sound. The woman looked at him first, then at Mira, and the Silver Howl Well spoke her name through every wolf in the court. Mira Vale, Mira Vale. The name did not echo. It entered. Every wolf in the courtyard spoke it in one breath, not with human tongues, but with lifted muzzles and low, trembling howls that rolled over the flooded stone. The Silver Howl Well blazed until the carved wolves around its rim looked alive, their stone throats shining with ancient waterlight. Mira could not move. The woman in the rising water had her face. Not exactly. Soraya's features were older, steadier, marked by grief and love and the kind of strength Mira had only ever imagined in women who belonged somewhere. But the shape of the eyes was the same. The mouth, the dark hair, the silver mark at the wrist. Mother. The word formed inside Mira without permission. Darius took one step toward the water vision, then stopped. Not because he feared it, because he looked like a man who had reached for a ghost too many times in dreams and could not survive watching his hand pass through her again. "Soraya," he said. The name broke in his throat. The water woman turned to him. Her expression softened with a pain so intimate the entire court seemed to vanish around it. "My wolf found yours before the crown did," she whispered. Darius's face changed. Not with surprise, with memory. The silver thread between his chest, Mira's palm, the well, and Evelyn's broken necklace burned brighter. More pearls cracked along Evelyn's throat. She cried out and clutched the remaining strand, but did not pull away. Mira reached for her. "Hold still." Evelyn laughed once through pain. "I have done little else." The bitterness in it made Mira's chest ache. Another pearl split. This time, a memory spilled out across the water. Soraya standing beside the well years ago, younger and alive, one hand over her stomach. Darius stood before her, not yet king, fierce and breathless, his black wolf circling behind him with its silver throat lifted to the moon. Between them stretched a glowing mate thread, bright as dawn underwater. Darius reached for Soraya's hand. Then the vision darkened. Council guards seized him from behind. Seravin's staff struck the stone. Evelyn, young and terrified, stood nearby while moon priests forced the mate thread into the well. Soraya screamed Darius's name. Darius fought like a man already losing his soul. And Seravin said, "Drown the bond before the wolf makes her queen." The memory vanished. The court recoiled. Lady Evelyn sobbed as the necklace burned deeper into her skin. "I did not know she carried a child," she whispered. "I swear it. I did not know." Soraya's water figure looked at her. There was sorrow there. Not forgiveness yet, but sorrow. "You were a child too," Soraya said. Evelyn covered her mouth. Seravin snarled, "Do not let a dead woman soften judgment." Darius turned on him. The flooded courtyard darkened around the Alpha King's boots. His shadow wolf rose behind him, no longer thin and broken, but still incomplete, its body torn open where the drowned bond should have fed it. "You told me she left," Darius said. Seravin's face hardened. "She would have destroyed you. You told me the bond died because she chose another pack. She chose forbidden blood over the crown." She carried my child. The sentence struck the court into silence. Mira felt the world tilt. She had known it from the vision, from Soraya's face, from the thread pulling toward Darius with grief too old to belong to a stranger. But hearing him say it made the truth terrifyingly real. The Alpha King looked at her then, not as a king looking at a wolfless girl, not even as a man looking at a mystery, as someone seeing the shape of a life stolen from him. Mira stepped back instinctively. The water resisted, curling around her ankles. Darius saw the movement and stopped himself from coming closer. That restraint hurt her more than if he had reached, because some frightened part of her wanted him to. Seravin seized the moment. Look at her. She does not even know you. Blood alone does not make truth. The well can shape visions from grief. The girl is a vessel, nothing more. Mira flinched at the word. Veshel. Evelyn lifted her head, tears bright on her face. No. Seravin looked at her. She stood slowly, still clutching the broken necklace. No more. His expression turned cold. You forget who made you Luna. You made me a lock. The remaining pearls flared as if punishing her for speaking. Evelyn gasped, but she held the strand away from her throat. Mira, she choked. The clasp. Behind my neck. It has his seal. Seravin raised his staff. Darius lung it. But the silver water surged between them, not to stop Darius, to stop the staff. A column of moon water wrapped around Seravin's wrist and held it mid-air. Mira had not meant to call it. She only knew she could not let him silence Evelyn too. The entire court saw. Seravin saw. His eyes widened with the first true fear he had shown. Well, song, he whispered. The word passed through the courtyard like a secret door opening. Mira reached behind Evelyn's neck. Her fingers found a hidden clasp beneath the pearls, shaped like a tiny wolf skull crowned in silver. Seravin's seal. The moment Mira touched it, the well screamed. Not in pain, in rage. A final memory burst across the water, Seravin pressing the seal to the necklace while young Evelyn shook, then pressing the same seal to Soraya's wrist as she lay bleeding beside the well. Let the child live wolfless, he said in the memory. A wolf will make her searchable. Emptiness will hide her better than any grave. Mira's breath stopped. Wolfless. Not born empty. Made hidden. The seal cracked under her fingers. Evelyn collapsed forward as the necklace broke apart. Pearls scattered into the water, each one releasing a trapped fragment of Darius's drowned bond. Silver threads shot upward, weaving through the air like living light. Darius staggered as they pierced his chest. The shadow wolf roared. Mira screamed his name without knowing she had chosen it. Darius. His eyes locked on hers. The mate thread in her palm blazed white. Soraya's water figure lifted one hand. Call it back, daughter. Mira shook her head, terrified. I don't know how. You have been calling all your life, Soraya whispered. You only thought no one answered. The well rose behind Mira like a silver tide. The wolves of the court lowered their heads, and the drowned bond began to climb out of the water. The drowned bond did not rise like a thread anymore. It rose like a living wound. Silver light climbed from the Silver Howl Well in long, trembling strands, twisting around one another until they formed a cord brighter than moonfire and darker at the center than grief. Every pearl shattered in the flooded courtyard sent another piece of it upward. Every piece struck Darius in the chest like a remembered blade. He did not fall. Mira saw how badly he wanted to. His shoulders bent, his hand pressed hard over his heart, and the shadow wolf behind him threw back its head in a roar that made the water tremble against the palace walls. Yet Darius stayed on his feet, eyes fixed on Mira as though she were the only thing keeping him from being dragged under the weight of what had been stolen. Do not fight it, Soraya whispered from the water. Darius looked at her, and the pain in his face became almost unbearable. I fought because they told me you left. I know. They told me the bond died because you refused me. I know. The words were soft. They broke him more than accusation would have. Mira stood between them, holding the burning thread, suddenly aware of the cruel shape of her existence. She was not only a wolfless servant, not only a hidden daughter. She was the living space between a love drowned before she was born and a king taught to believe abandonment had made him strong. The bond pulled through her hand. She gasped. Darius stepped forward despite the pain. Mira. The sound of her name from him shook something loose inside her. Not the buried power, not the well song. Something smaller and more fragile. A daughter's fear. If I call it back, she whispered. What happens to her? No one needed to ask who she meant. Soraya's water shape flickered beside the well, beautiful and sorrowful beneath the silver light. The court quieted. Even Seravin stopped struggling against the moon water binding his wrist. Soraya looked at Mira with the tenderness of a woman who had waited too long to be a mother. I was never inside the bond, child. Only my promise was. Only what they stole. But you came back. For a moment. Because you listened. The answer hurt. Mira wanted more. More time. More questions. More proof that she had not invented the softness in Soraya's eyes because she was desperate to belong to anyone. Soraya seemed to hear that too. Listen to me, she said. You were not made wolfless because you were empty. Seravin hid your wolf song beneath the well so no one could trace you. But what is hidden can wake. Mira could not breathe. My wolf? The silver water around her wrists brightened. For the first time, every wolf in the courtyard lowered its head. Not in worship. In recognition of something approaching. Seravin's face twisted. Do not tell her that. Darius turned on him. You stole her wolf too? Seravin's jaw clenched. I saved the kingdom from a child who would have tied you to a dead scandal forever. A child, Darius said, voice lethal. My child. The words struck Mira harder than any reveal before them. My child. She had heard the truth in visions, seen it in water, felt it through the bond. But this was different. Spoken aloud, it became flesh. It became years lost. It became every time she had scrubbed a hallway while her father ruled above her, and neither of them knew. Darius looked at her then. The deadly king vanished for one breath, and beneath him stood a man who had just realized he had passed his own daughter in the palace, without knowing her name. Mira stepped back, not from hatred, from too much. Silver water splashed around her knees. Do not look at me like that. His face tightened. Like what? Like I am something you lost. Pain moved through his eyes. You are. I am someone who survived. The words came out sharper than she intended. The courtyard held its breath. Darius bowed his head once, as if accepting a wound he deserved. Yes, that stopped her anger from finding another blade. Because he did not argue, did not claim, did not demand a daughter's forgiveness from a girl who had only just learned she had a father. He only stood bleeding in the moon water and let her truth stand beside his. Eveline, collapsed near the broken pearls, lifted a trembling hand. The last lock is beneath the clasp. Mira looked down. Among the scattered pearls lay the broken silver wolf skull seal. Inside its cracked mouth glowed a small black knot of thread. Not Darius's bond. Hers. The moment Mira saw it, something inside her chest answered. A soundless howl, so faint she almost mistook it for fear. Seravin ripped his wrist free from the moon water at last. Skin burned raw. Enough. He drove the end of his cracked staff into the flooded stone. Black ash spread in a violent circle. The silver water recoiled. Soraya's image flickered. The bond light wavered. Darius lunged for Seravin, but the ash circle rose between them like a wall. The shadow wolf struck it and split into smoke with a roar of pain. Seravin seized the wolf skull seal from the water. Mira felt the knot inside her chest tighten. She dropped to her knees, choking. Darius shouted her name. Seravin held up the seal. One more step, and I drown what remains of her wolf before it wakes. The entire courtyard froze. Mira clawed at her own throat, though nothing wrapped around it now. The pressure was inside, deep beneath her ribs, where a wolf should have lived, and had instead been folded into silence. Soraya's water form dimmed. "Mira," she said urgently, "do not chase the stolen piece." Mira shook her head, barely able to hear. Seravin's hand closed tighter around the seal. Pain burst through her chest. Darius slammed both fists against the ash wall. "Give it to me." Seravin smiled, not triumphantly, but with the exhausted certainty of a man who had burned too many bridges to stop before the last one. This is why the council ruled. Wolves make kings weak. Bonds make them reckless. Daughters make them mortal. Mira looked at him through tears. Then at the well, the water was still whispering. Not to the stolen knot. To her. Do not chase what he holds. Call what he could not take. Mira forced her shaking palm into the silver water. Seravin's smile faltered. The well went utterly still. Then, from beneath the courtyard, beneath the palace, beneath every drowned promise Seravin had ever buried, a howl answered. Not Darius. Not Sorayas. Hers. The silver water rose behind Mira in the shape of a young wolf made of moonlit waves, thin and unfinished, but alive. Its eyes opened, bright as the well's heart. Seravin stared at it in horror. The black knot in his hand turned to ash. Mira lifted her head, and for the first time in her life, a wolf looked out from inside her. The courtyard did not move. For one long moment, even the water held still around Mira's knees. The young wolf, made of moonlit waves, stood behind her, thin and trembling, its body shaped from silver water and pale breath. It was not yet solid, not yet whole. Its ribs shimmered like reflected starlight. Its paws dissolved into ripples each time it shifted, but its eyes were open, and they were hers. Mira felt it looking through her, not as something separate, not as a beast she had earned, but as a piece of herself that had been waiting under drowned silence for years. The ache inside her chest changed. It did not vanish. It widened, like a door opening from the inside. A sound broke from one of the royal wolves near the eastern gate. A low whine. Then the old scarred black wolf lowered its head to the flooded stone. One by one, the others followed. The wolves did not bow to Mira because she had conquered them. They lowered themselves because they recognized a wolf that had survived being hidden. Seravin stared at the black ash crumbling through his fingers where the stolen knot had been. His face had gone slack with disbelief. "No," he whispered. The word was small. Mira had heard that tone before. Men like Seravin used it when the world refused the shape they had carved for it. Darius stood on the other side of the ash wall, breathing hard, his fist still pressed to the black barrier. Blood ran from his split knuckles into the silver water. The shadow wolf beside him had reformed, larger now, its torn body drawn toward Mira's young wolf with a grief that felt almost human. Soraya's water form flickered near the well. Her smile was faint, but proud. "He could hide your wolf song," she said. "He could not kill the water that remembered it." Mira looked down at her hands. They were shaking. Power had not made her fearless. If anything, fear had become sharper. There was more to lose now. A name, a mother's face, a father's grief. A wolf still too fragile to survive another drowning. Seravin saw that fear and reached for it. "Look at her," he said to the court, voice rising. "You think this is salvation? That thing behind her is not a true wolf. It is well-spawned magic, a reflection wearing a girl's pain." Mira's young wolf flinched. So did she. Darius's voice cut through the courtyard. "Speak of her again like she is an object, and I will remove your tongue before judgment." Seravin smiled coldly. "There, the king proves my point. One glimpse of a daughter, and he forgets the kingdom." The word struck hard. Daughter. Mira wanted it, feared it, resented it, all at once. Darius did not look away from Seravin. "No, I remember what the kingdom became while men like you ruled in my grief." The ash wall pulsed weaker, the mate bond strands floating between the broken pearls, the well, and Darius's chest began to weave themselves together, but the pattern kept breaking where the last lock remained. Evelyn lifted her head from the flooded steps. She looked pale enough to vanish, her throat marked by red burns where the pearls had rested for years. "There is one seal left," she said. Seravin's eyes snapped to her. Evelyn swallowed, then looked at Mira. "Not in the pearls. In me." Mira went cold. Darius turned. "What does that mean?" Evelyn's mouth trembled. "The council needed a living vessel. The pearls held the pieces, but I held the closing vow. If I die, the bond collapses. If I live with it sealed, the bond remains drowned." Seravin's expression hardened. "You were instructed never to speak of that." Evelyn laughed softly, brokenly. "I was instructed never to breathe unless it pleased the council." The silver water around her stirred. Mira heard something inside Evelyn now. Not a wolf, not a bond. A locked scream. For the first time, Mira understood why the well had not simply destroyed her. Evelyn had been part of the cage, but she had also been chained to it. Darius looked at her with cold fury and reluctant pity. "Can it be removed?" Evelyn looked at Soraya. The waterwoman answered gently. "Only by the one who can call drowned promises without claiming them." Everyone turned to Mira. She stepped back. "No." The words slipped out before courage could catch it. The young waterwolf behind her trembled. "I do not know how to do this," Mira said. "I do not know how to free bonds or break seals or save anyone. An hour ago, none of you looked at me. Now you look as if I am supposed to fix what you all let happen." The truth silenced the courtyard more completely than magic had. Darius lowered his head. Shame moved through the court in visible waves. Some nobles looked away. Some temple women began to cry. A few guards stared at the flooded stone as if seeing their own boots for the first time. Soraya's voice softened. "Then do not fix it for them." Mira looked at her. "Do it because no one should remain what Seravin made them." Mira's breath shook. That was different. She turned toward Evelyn. The false Luna looked up at her, stripped of gold and performance, kneeling in the water with burns around her throat. "I watched them lower you," Evelyn whispered. "I was afraid. I know. I let them. I know." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Then why would you help me?" Mira looked at her young wolf. It was still trembling, still unfinished, but it had not vanished. "Because I know what it is to be used as proof of someone else's law." Evelyn's face crumpled. Mira stepped closer and placed one hand over Evelyn's burned throat. The moment she touched her, the court disappeared. She stood inside a dark chamber of water and pearl. A younger Evelyn knelt in the center, the necklace newly sealed to her skin. Around her, Seravin and the council spoke over her cries. In her throat glowed a small silver knot, the closing vow. Mira reached for it. The knot burned, not with fire. With every year, Evelyn had smiled while hearing Darius scream through pearls. Mira nearly pulled away. Then her young wolf entered the vision. It pressed its wet nose to Mira's wrist. Not strong, not fierce, present. Mira took the knot in both hands and listened. Beneath the pain was one sentence, repeated until it had become a lock. "The crown needs what love would ruin." Mira spoke into the water. "No crown is worth this." The knot split. Back in the courtyard, Evelyn screamed once. Silver light burst from her throat and shot toward Darius, toward the well, toward Mira's palm. The mate bond strands snapped together with a sound like thunder underwater. The ash walls shattered. Darius fell to one knee as the completed bond struck his chest. His shadow wolf became flesh for one impossible breath. Black fur, silver throat, eyes blazing with grief and fury. Then it turned toward Mira's young water wolf. The two wolves touched foreheads. The entire Silver Howl Well erupted upward, forming a shining arch above the courtyard. Inside the arch appeared the true shape of the drowned bond. Not Darius and Evelyn, not duty and politics, Darius and Soraya. And between them, a newborn child marked by water before birth. Mira. The court saw. No one could unknow it now. Seravin backed away, as the water around his feet turned black. Darius rose slowly, the restored bond burning in his chest, his true wolf at his side, and his eyes fixed on the man who had drowned his life. "Run," the Alpha King said softly. Serovin did, and the well opened beneath him. Serovin ran like a man who had never believed judgment could have legs. For years, he had stood above others at wells, thrones, and temple steps, naming sacrifice with clean hands while guards did the dragging. Now the Silver Howl Well opened beneath his feet, and the white stone of the courtyard split in a perfect circle around him. Black water rose first. Not silver, black. It climbed over his boots, then his knees, thick as drowned ink. Serovin struck at it with his broken staff, but the wood splintered in his hands. The well did not pull him down yet. It held him where everyone could see, the same way he had held Mira. Darius crossed the flooded courtyard with his true wolf beside him. The beast was no longer a shadow. It moved like living night, massive and scarred, black fur shining with silver along its throat. Every step sent ripples through the moon water. Its eyes never left Serovin. Serovin lifted one hand. "Majesty." The word came too late. Darius stopped a few paces away. Water curled around his boots, bright near him, black near Serovin. The restored bond still burned across his chest beneath the torn armor, and Mira could feel it from where she stood beside Evelyn. Not as ownership, not as command, as grief finally given shape. "You do not get to use that word as shelter," Darius said. Serovin's face tightened. "I preserved your reign. You drowned my bond. I prevented a war. You stole my child. I hid a threat." Mira's young water wolf growled behind her. The sound was faint compared to Darius's wolf, but every wolf in the courtyard heard it. Their heads turned, their ears lifted. They did not laugh at its weakness. Wolves did not laugh at wounded things that still stood. Mira felt that recognition settle through her like warmth after years of cold. Serovin looked at her with hatred. "You are still wolfless without the well." Mira stepped forward. The water parted for her. "No," she said. "I was wolf, hidden." The words rang softly through the courtyard. Not loud. True. The young wolf behind her took one step with her, its paws forming and dissolving with each movement. It was fragile, unfinished, but it did not vanish. Evelyn remained kneeling where the closing vow had been torn from her throat. The burns around her neck glowed faintly silver. She looked exhausted, stripped of every polished layer the court had admired, but for the first time her eyes were her own. She looked at Serovin. "You told me if I endured, I would become Luna." Serovin did not look at her. "You were given honor. You gave me a cage and called it jewelry." A few noble women lowered their eyes. Mira wondered how many of them wore gifts that were really locks. Darius's wolf snarled, but Darius lifted one hand and the beast held. That gesture changed the courtyard. The king was not being dragged by restored rage. He was ruling it. Darius turned to the court. "You have seen the drowned bond. You have seen the stolen child. You have heard the well name Mira Vale. Let any house that still stands with Serovin speak now." No one spoke, but silence was not enough. Mira knew that now. Silence had drowned bonds. Silence had hidden children. Silence had dressed pain in pearls and called it duty. She looked at the nobles, guards, priests, and wolves. No, not silence. Darius turned toward her. So did the court. Her heart beat hard enough to hurt. She was still afraid of being looked at. Power had not erased that. Truth had not made her suddenly fearless. But the well hummed beneath her feet, and her wolf stood behind her, and her mother's name lived in the air. "Speak," Mira said. "If you believed him, say it. If you helped him, say it. If you looked away, say it." The courtyard shifted uneasily. An old temple woman dropped to her knees first. "I marked children for water rights. I did not ask where they went after." A royal guard bowed his head. "I held the prince down the night they brought him to the well." Darius went still. The guard's voice broke. I was young. That does not cleanse me. A nobleman stepped back as if distance could save him from memory. My father signed the water law. Another voice, then another. Small confessions at first, then larger ones. The court began to unravel itself aloud. Seravin laughed bitterly. You think this heals anything? Give frightened people a chance to confess, and they will decorate themselves with guilt. By dawn, they will call it courage. Mira looked at him. Then dawn will hear them too. The Silver Howl Well answered. The black water around Seravin rose to his waist. Faces appeared in it, not human faces, not fully, but impressions of promises drowned before they could be kept. Mate threads severed for alliances. Wolf vows buried for succession. Children hidden because their blood complicated inheritance. Seravin's breath quickened. For the first time, he looked down. Darius stepped closer. You will not die in that well tonight. Seravin looked up sharply. No, Darius said. Death is too quiet. The black water tightened around the counselor like chains. You will be held where every pack can come and hear what was drowned. Every name, every bond, every child. You will listen until the last hidden promise rises. Seravin's face twisted. That could take years. Darius's eyes were merciless. Then you should have buried less. The well dragged Seravin down to his chest, leaving him bound upright in the center of the opened stone, alive, gasping, unable to command anyone. The court watched. No one rescued him. Mira turned toward the water arch where Soraya's figure still flickered faintly. Her mother was fading now. The restored bond no longer needed to hold her promise in pain, and the well was preparing to release what remained. Mira moved toward her too quickly, splashing through silver water. No, she whispered. Not yet. Soraya smiled, and it broke Mira's heart because it was proud and sorry at once. My love was never meant to be your prison. I just found you. I know. Darius came to stand beside Mira, but he did not reach for Soraya. His hands remained at his sides, clenched with the restraint of a man learning that love could not be seized back from death. Soraya looked at him. Do not ask her to become what we lost. Darius bowed his head. Never. Then she looked at Mira. And do not let the kingdom turn your wound into a crown before you are ready to wear your own name. Mira's throat closed. What is my name, then? Soraya's form shimmered. The one you choose after surviving theirs. The water arch trembled. Soraya lifted one fading hand, and Mira felt a warm touch on her brow, light as moon mist. Your wolf will grow when you stop apologizing for its silence. Then Soraya Vale dissolved into the silver water. The well did not roar. It sung, softly, like a mother leaving a lullaby behind. Mira stood shaking in the flooded courtyard, Darius beside her, his wolf behind him, her young water wolf pressed close to her back. The court waited for the king to speak, but Darius looked at Mira first, not to ask permission, to make room. And for the first time in Ravengard's history, the wolfless girl the court had thrown into the well was the one everyone waited to hear. Mira did not know what a kingdom expected from a girl it had almost drowned. Forgiveness, perhaps. Mercy, if it wanted to feel noble. A blessing, if it wanted to pretend the well had chosen a saint instead of exposing a crime. She looked across the flooded courtyard at the nobles standing ankle-deep in silver water, at the temple women with ash still staining their fingers, at the guards who had held ropes, chains, and silence with equal obedience. Every face waited for her to soften what had happened. Her young wolf pressed against her back. It was still made of waterlight, still trembling, but the warmth of it moved through her spine like a second heartbeat, not strong enough to fight armies, not old enough to carry royal prophecy, just alive. That was enough. Mira lifted her chin. You called this approving, she said. The courtyard held still. Her voice shook at first, but the well carried it, turning each word clear beneath the moon. You wanted the water to prove I had no wolf, no destiny, no soul worth saving. But the well proved something else. It proved the throne was lied to. It proved a bond was drowned. It proved a child was hidden inside silence because powerful people feared what love would reveal. No one answered. Mira looked toward Seravin, still bound in black water at the broken center of the courtyard. His face had gone pale, but hatred kept him upright. "You made me wolfless," she said, "and then you punished me for surviving it." The black water around him tightened. Darius stood beside her, motionless, but she felt the violence in him waiting for permission. His wolf felt it too. The great black beast watched Seravin with silver-throated rage, yet neither king nor wolf moved ahead of her. Mira looked at Darius. That restraint did not erase the years. It did not return childhood, mother, name, or safety, but it mattered. He was not taking the moment from her, not even to avenge her. She turned back to the court. "I do not know how to be what the well woke tonight," she said. "I do not know how to be a daughter to a king I was taught to fear. I do not know how to carry Mira Vale's blood without grieving the years I never had with her. And I will not pretend I am healed because all of you finally looked at me." The words cut deeper than any dramatic curse could have. Several nobles lowered their heads. Evelyn wept silently near the steps, one hand over the burned place where the pearls had been. Mira looked at her, and the court followed her gaze. Evelyn stiffened as if expecting judgment. Mira remembered the way she had stood beside Seravin. The soft pity, the gold gown, the glowing pearls, the silence while Mira was lowered. Then she remembered the girl in the vision, clawing at a necklace while Seravin told her pain was duty. "You will answer for what you allowed," Mira said. Evelyn bowed her head. "I know, but you will not be buried inside what they made you." Evelyn covered her mouth, and for the first time, her tears did not look rehearsed. Darius's voice came low beside Mira. "The false lunar title is ended. Lady Evelyn will stand witness against the old council. After judgment, she may leave court or remain under her own name. No necklace, no vow, no crown." Evelyn sank lower, not in courtly elegance, but in exhausted relief. Seravin laughed from the black water. "So this is the new law? A wolfless girl's trembling mercy?" Mira looked at him. Her wolf lifted its head. "I am not wolfless." The simple sentence moved through the courtyard like dawn through smoke. The young water wolf stepped around her side. For one breath, its body became clearer, slim, silver gray, unfinished but unmistakably real. It stood between Mira and Seravin, eyes bright with the well's ancient light. Every royal wolf lowered its head again. This time the nobles followed slower, not from panic, from understanding that the old order had cracked, and the girl before them was no longer evidence in their ritual. She was witness, blood, daughter, survivor. Darius turned to the assembled court. "The Silver Howl Well is closed to punishment from this night forward," he declared. "No child, servant, omega, mate, or accused soul will be lowered into sacred water to satisfy noble fear. Every bond drowned by the council will be named. Every family broken by water law will be recorded. Every house that profited from hidden vows will face judgment." A commander near the eastern gate knelt. "And the council?" Darius looked at Seravin. "The first council is dissolved. Until the pack houses are cleansed, judgment will be witnessed by the well, the wolves, and those who were silenced." Seravin's mouth twisted. "You would let pain govern law?" "No," Darius said. "I will no longer let fear pretend it is law." The Silver Howl Well sang softly beneath them. Mira felt its song through her feet, through her hands, through the thread still glowing faintly around her wrist. The restored bond between Darius and Soraya no longer pulled like a wound. It rested now, not as a chain to the dead, but as a truth finally returned to its rightful place. Darius turned to her. For a moment, the entire court vanished from his eyes. Only Mira remained. "My daughter," he said quietly. The words nearly broke her. Not because they fixed anything, because they opened everything. Her first instinct was to step away. Her second was to step closer. She did neither. She stayed where she was, trembling, alive, with her young wolf breathing beside her. "I do not know how to answer that yet," she whispered. Darius's face tightened with grief, but he nodded. "Then I will wait. No demand. No wounded pride. No command disguised as love. Just wait." Mira looked at him for a long moment. Then she slowly held out the hand still marked by the silver thread. Darius looked at it as if it were more dangerous than any blade he had ever faced. Then he took it gently. The moment their hands touched, the well rose once more. Not violently, softly. A final image formed above the water. Mira Vale standing beneath the moon, smiling through silver mist, one hand over her heart and one hand lifted in farewell. Behind her, the drowned bond glowed like a bridge, not pulling her back, only proving she had existed, loved, fought, and left something precious behind. Mira's tears fell before she could stop them. Her wolf pressed its wet muzzle into her palm. Darius bowed his head to Soraya's image, not as a king, as a man who had loved and lost and learned the shape of what remained. The image faded. Dawn touched the highest towers of Ravengard. The silver water began to recede into the well, carrying black ash, broken pearls, and old lies down into the depths where they would no longer rule the living. Seravin remained bound at the center, held upright by the dark water that had once hidden his crimes. His punishment would not be quick. Every pack would come. Every drowned promise would be named before him. Mira stood at the rim of the Silver Howl Well and looked into the water that had nearly become her grave. Her reflection looked back, not empty, not fully healed, not crowned, but changed. Behind her stood the Alpha King, no longer hollowed by a dead bond. Beside him stood his true wolf, black and silver, and silent now by choice, not by theft. At Mira's side, her young water wolf lifted its head toward the morning. For the first time in her life, Mira heard an answering howl rise from inside her own chest. Small, unsteady, real. And when the court heard it, no one called her Wolfless again.